Hey there, word detectives, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us today. We are stepping into the grand hall of advanced words for a championship masterclass on the Latin root mort. We're going way beyond the basics here to master true championship-level vocabulary. And honestly, the best part, we're going to do it without ever just memorizing boring, endless lists. Nope, we're going to decode these words together like true detectives.
Okay, here's our game plan for today's journey. First up, a welcome to advanced vocab. Next, we'll hit law, history, and science, then literature and philosophy, followed by medical vocabulary. After that, we'll get our hands dirty in the word detective lab, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with some quizzes and our champion takeaway.
Welcome to Advanced MORT Vocabulary, or Becoming a Word Detective.
Now, we assume you already know that mort means death, but today we're uncovering advanced words that, frankly, a lot of adults have never even heard of, just by using our morphology skills. Imagine we're stepping into a lush botanical garden with our guide, Professor Elephant. Our first word is mortiferous. If we break that down, it combines mort with fur and us. Literally translated, it means death-carrying, so its modern meaning is bringing death, or simply deadly. We also have mortifer, rooted in Latin, which also just means deadly. But hey, nature isn't just about endings, right? Take the word immortelle. This is actually a fascinating little flower whose dried blossoms keep their shape for a really long time. It gets its name right from immortal because, well, it appears to live forever. These are literally game-changing decoding strategies for any spelling bee.
Let's transition over to the historical archive to see how this root builds a timeline of funeral services. First up, mortuary science, which is the scientific study and professional practice of these services. And that naturally brings us to the mortician. Now, this isn't just a random word. It represents a highly dedicated profession that requires very specific education and has a rich historical development that tracks exactly how society has cared for the departed over time.
So, how does a legal and business world use this root? Well, take the word mortgage. Ever wonder why lawyers would use that specific expression? It literally translates to a dead pledge. It's a deal that dies either when the debt is finally paid off or when the payment fails. Fascinating, right? Then there's mortmain, which is a historical legal term for property permanently owned by a medieval religious organization. Think of it as the dead hand of the church that never gives up control. And finally, in the modern business world, we have the pre-mortem. This is the incredibly smart practice of thinking about possible business failures before they actually happen, so you can prevent them entirely.
This next concept brilliantly illustrates what we call semantic shift. Imagine wandering into our monastery wing with our guide, Deer, to see how a word evolves over centuries. Originally, the word mortify literally meant to put to death. Later on, it shifted to mean disciplining the body through religious self-denial. Then, in historical medicine, mortification actually referred to literal tissue death. But today, if you say you're mortified, you mean you're suffering intense, tremendous embarrassment. The word's journey from literal death to just awkward social embarrassment is a perfect example of how language breathes and changes over time.
Gathering now in the peaceful philosophy garden, we're going to examine words that deal with memory and eternity. One of the absolute most vital Latin expressions out there is memento mori, which means remember that you must die. It's a profound concept deeply rooted in Roman culture and super famous in Renaissance paintings. We also see historical religious vocabulary popping up, like mortal sin. But on the flip side of that, we have words of permanent remembrance. To immortalize is to preserve something forever in memory, through the process of immortalization. And the word immortal itself, that echoes across mythology, religion, literature, and even modern science fiction. Okay, so the absolutely crucial point in our science lab with Beaver is seeing exactly how the MORT root anchors extensive scientific terminology. It's a massive data set. In medicine, we have rigor mortis. That's the scientific reason muscles become stiff, along with postmortem examinations and specific forensic postmortem. But postmortem also has a really common figurative meaning today, a careful review after a failure, like, say, a sports team holding a postmortem after losing a big championship. Over in the math and insurance worlds, statisticians rely heavily on the mortality table, the mortality rate, and the mortality curve. This extends right into highly advanced fields tracking disease in populations, with terms like epidemiological mortality and demographic mortality.
Now, Tiger is guiding us out into the desert for an archaeological excavation. Here, we study mortuary archaeology, which is the specific study of ancient burial practices. A really magnificent historical example of this is the mortuary temple of ancient Egypt. These were massive, awe-inspiring historical structures dedicated entirely to the cult of the dead.
Before we leave the history wing, we need to talk about false friends in the carpenter's workshop. Not every single word starting with M-O-R-T belongs to our root family. Take mortadella. Its exact origin is debated, but it absolutely, unequivocally does not derive from the death root. And mortise is purely a woodworking term for joining pieces together, completely unrelated. This is exactly why championship spellers absolutely must verify etymology. You can't just guess.
Sections 3 and 4, Literature and Philosophy, the Storybook Library. Let's parse out some advanced literary phrases. In mythology and epic tales, we constantly see the mortal hero clashing with the immortal gods. We read about intense, epic conflicts against a mortal enemy, sometimes resulting in a fatal mortal wound. And of course, we cannot forget Shakespeare's famous poetic phrase, the mortal coil, representing the daily struggles of earthly life. All of these phrases contribute to the grand mortality theme found in so many great books.
Building right on top of that literature, we find some pretty profound philosophical concepts. These ideas really highlight how humanity wrestles with our mortality while constantly dreaming of immortality. It's basically the core of the human condition. Ultimately, philosophy asks us what legacy we're going to leave behind and how we will achieve remembrance.
Section 5, Medical Vocabulary Review. Let's revisit the calm, super-focused environment of a children's hospital to review exactly how modern medical professionals utilize these terms in their daily scientific practice. Doctors and coroners rely on the post-mortem and they study rigor mortis. Hospitals have a dedicated mortuary wing. Public health officials carefully track mortality and the overall mortality rate, and medical historians study that archaic concept of tissue mortification. Seeing them grouped together like this really cements how they are used professionally. Section 6. The Word Detective Lab. Assembling the Puzzle. Watch closely now as Chipmunk helps us map out the morphology for 8 advanced terms. We are physically separating every prefix, root, and suffix to map their journey from literal translation to modern meaning. Think of it like a giant puzzle. Take immortalization. We have the prefix im, meaning not, our root mort, and the suffixes al, is, and ation, which together turn it into the process of not dying in memory. We see premortem, meaning before death, and postmortem, meaning after death. We see the literal dead hand in Mort Main, the memory of death in Memento Mori, the ancient practices of mortuary archaeology, and the statistical reality of the mortality table. Breaking these words down piece by piece makes even the longest, scariest words totally manageable. Sections 7 and 8, Spelling Bee and Quick Meaning Challenges. Let's point out some extremely common spelling bee traps. You've got to watch out for these pairs. Do not confuse the woodworking term mortis with mortality. Definitely do not mix up the sliced meat mortadella with mortal. Pay super close attention to the difference between immortal, meaning living forever, and immorality, which means wicked behavior. One missing T changes the whole shebang. And finally, don't confuse mortify with modify. Knowing your roots ensures you never, ever fall for these sound-alike traps.
Take a deep breath. Can you predict the meanings of these advanced words before we reveal the answers? Think back to our roots, our prefixes, and those semantic shifts we talked about. Go ahead, give it your best shot.
All right, check your mental detective notebooks. How many of those complex definitions did you successfully crack using just your morphology skills? If you remember that a premortem is a business review before failure, or that mortiferous means deadly, you are doing absolutely fantastic. Section 9. Championship Quiz. We've reached our ultimate challenge out in the forest classroom. We're mixing everything we've learned together into one giant puzzle board. Morphology, etymology, literal and modern meanings, false relatives, and pronunciation. The real question is, are you ready to solve it? And look at that! It brilliantly illustrates your progress. You can now successfully trace these complex language pathways. You know the exact origins, you know which words belong to the MOR family, and you can decode even the absolute trickiest false relatives with total confidence.
Section 10, the champion takeaway. We leave you with this final, powerful piece of advice for the next time you face a terrifying new word on the spelling bee stage. Remember, the strongest contestants don't just memorize endless lists. They truly understand roots. So the next time you meet an unfamiliar Mort word, don't panic. Break it apart, trace its history, connect it to the root, and let the word reveal its meaning. The choice is yours. Will you panic, or will you let the root reveal its secrets? Thanks for joining me on this Explainer Word Detectives. Keep analyzing, and I'll catch you next time.